First of all, thank you guys for doing this. I'm so excited to be here. I love this show. I'm obsessed with you.
I'm obsessed with you. Bleep it.
So let's start with the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, Overcompensating started as a stage show at the New York Comedy Festival in 2018. What made you want to bring this and tell more of this story and bring it to television?
Yeah, I think, I was touring that show and it was the first time I was kind of myself. And I was telling these stories about being in the closet and I was finding that it was kind of cathartic and some of the kind of cringe stories I was telling, people were laughing with me. And then after kind of having an emotional response. And so when I looked to, I knew I wanted to make a show and I think I was looking to heroes like Phoebe Waller-Bridge or Issa Rae, and I felt like those were kind of coming of age stories that they were telling, or the moments in your life that shifted how you are now. And I was like, oh, well, I think that's in college. And I had so many jokes for that, but then I thought about, actually, I think the time when I stopped overcompensating as much, I'm still overcompensating. Look at this fucking outfit. Woo! But I just remember being like, it was when I met this woman in college and she didn't know anything of my past. And I started to tiptoe out of the closet to her. And I was like, oh, this feels like a story here that feels universal. It feels specific to my coming out story, but also that the girl across from me is overcompensating too. And so are all the people around us, and we all don't know who we are. And so when I went to start writing the scripts, I think the first one I wrote was a pregame scene with Haley and Carmen, and I just found like, oh, I could write college forever. And that's how we felt in the room too. I'm like, oh my God, there's a circus going around these people at any given time. And if anything feels too heavy, it's like, dick, just put a dick. We were like, oh, or like have someone throw up, which feels so honest to what that time in your life is like.
And universal again.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, Mary Beth, you and Benito go back, right? You've done 2 podcasts together before Overcompensating, which is your series regular debut. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you so much.
Was acting something you always wanted to do in your career, and did you even have to audition to play Grace?
So that's 2 questions. I'll do one at a time. So I did always want to be an actor as a kid, but I didn't have any connections to the industry, so that all felt very unrealistic. So when I never got scouted at the mall to have my own Disney Channel show, which felt very unfair to me, I just decided to put that dream aside. And then I went to college to study to be an English teacher, and I didn't really like that either. So when I dropped out of school, I got a job in New York and then eventually found improv at UCB. And once I opened that door, I had to completely reset my life. And I decided I wanted to be a comedian. And with that, it sort of naturally lends itself to writing and performing and acting and eventually having a podcast, which is the great joy of my life. And so it just, and also I think the people that you meet, and I was lucky enough to have met Benny at a stand-up show, it felt like we really wanted to create opportunities for each other. And so I feel very lucky. And this role was so fun to play. And obviously we have a very friendly relationship, but familial in ways too. But it was fun to be mean to each other on screen because we don't usually do that. And then as far as the audition process, yes, I did have to audition. I auditioned 4 times actually, sort of famously at this point. And the first round, I feel like the character was so nuanced, and so I think they really wanted us to find the character through the audition process. And so we did a few rounds that were just me and Benny, proving that we had chemistry, and then I read with the actors. We didn't, yeah. We got a lot of notes on that one. And then I read with the actors auditioning to play Peter. And then the final round audition was me singing Welcome to the Black Parade karaoke style in a room with the director, the casting director, and Benny. And I remember before that, he was like, you just have to leave it all in the room. And so I did. I just wore my heart on my sleeve in that audition. And it really, I think somehow that really clicked for the people at Prime. And they were just like, oh, we get it now. And that's her. So yeah, it was a long process, but it was worth it.
Scott, what about you?
Yes.
4 auditions.
4 auditions.
What about you, Scott? You've got some incredible credits. Mad TV, one of my all-time favorites, The Big Gay Sketch Show.
Come on, Big Gay Sketch Show. Kate McKinnon, Coleman Domingo's first TV jobs. How about that?
Iconic. So how did you wind up connected with Overcompensating?
I just keep wanting to say that I was in the mall and discovered for my own Disney Channel show. I just want to do a callback. I met Benny on a Zoom. He was meeting with different showrunners. I wish it was a more dynamic story, but we just started talking and it really was an instant click. And I've been, doing this and getting to work with different people for a long time. And we just had, it's like what I said to him the other night was it feels like what family is supposed to feel like. I necessarily have had that before in my life. And now it's just been a dream. We met, we clicked, and then jumped into writing. And it was just very what I do, what he does. It was just very complimentary.
Was there something about what Benito was doing that really stood out and appealed to you and felt different?
His pilot script was unbelievable. I mean, it was just great. So much of what it was there, I think, 97 drafts ago. It really started. And he has just such an original voice and so unique. And also, as hokey as it sounds, the world's nicest person. I mean, we were shooting, it was crazy. There was never a bad mood. It was I'm feeling very wistful because I'm very old and I'm sure things are winding down for me, but this was such a great experience.
There hasn't been a season 2 announcement yet, so don't talk about winding down because we need you.
There's gonna be a season 2. There has to be. Everybody right.
All
we'll give
your
you some
reps,
cell
all your
numbers to
senators.
text
All
as
your
well.
reps, get this passed in the House and then to the Senate floor.
But let's talk about episode 5, Benito. You wrote this one, and it ends with the real reason that Benny has been overcompensating so much, right? He comes out to Carmen, and it's so beautiful and it's so poignant. I have seen it twice. I have cried both times. But, this show is inspired by your life. How much of that scene is rooted in your own experience or an experience that you wish you had?
Ooh, God. I mean, that feeling and that moment where you've put so much love and acceptance and also maybe like your sexual awakening and your escape out of the closet on someone else who can't do anything with it was 100% my experience. And I think almost it was this combination of a woman that gave me the safe space to say it and a straight man that made me be like, well, I like dick. Like, God damn it. Fuck. I was like, I wanted to be anything. But then I think I was like, and that is what I wanted the ending to feel like. It's that this kind of devastating moment. But then I think the love story of this is that one between Benny and Carmen. And that was always me with the women. I wasn't seeking queer people when I first got to college because I thought, okay, if I'm with queer people, then everyone's going to know I'm gay. But obviously there's an attraction. I want to spend time with them. I want to learn. I want to come out at some point. So I think women offered me, a way to start to explore who I was. And I think you see that in this show. I think that's also why I want a season 2 so bad. I think there's so much more I want to tell of this, when you start to spend time with queer people and really start to discover yourself. But writing that episode was really hard to do, but I feel really lucky that I got to do it with Scott King and my best friend. And I think, all we wanted was queer people to see that moment and feel like they had finally seen what they felt on screen, which is just like absolute devastation and like that gut wrench of being like, God, I so saw this night going a different way. And I'm in this fucking costume now, And but it was also a joy to write, I think, in a way. And we knew also, that we weren't going to have Benny say, I'm gay to Carmen, because I think I had seen that on screen and I thought, oh, I don't know any of my friends or any gay people that said that to the first person. I think it's way more complicated. And I had to say I'm gay to myself so much after I even said to her. I think the way I worded it to my friend, and I did come out to her in a Domino's parking lot, not at a party.
As you do.
Romantic. And she was like, what do you mean? You're so, that's shocking. You're so masculine, my love. Yeah, I don't even know what I was saying, but I think it was just that this feeling of not having to say that to a friend, I think how it feels like for so many queer people of that person who really sees you, and which is hard to put in a script, but I think I got to make this show with all the right people who made that come alive, and I really am so proud of it. So thank you for saying that.
What was it like filming that scene?
Oh, I bawled the whole day. Carmen's also named after my godmother, who passed away when I was in college, and I never got to come out to her. So I had that conversation with Wally and a lot of conversations with my friend Scott King, who is such a mentor to me and a champion. And I think any showrunner could have approached this, and rightly so, and been like, you've never done something like this before. Like, you don't know, let me teach you. And instead, it was such a partnership. And I think that that's how I felt the whole time. And on a day like that, that's where you're pulling from your life experiences, and you're also feeling like, I'm not saying that this is the end all be all of that experience for queer people, but I think you do feel like I have the privilege of making this, and people have given us budget and everyone's here. We have to get this right. Like this is, and also because it felt so personal, I was like, it has to feel like this. But yeah, it was really emotional, but looking at Wally was so easy. Because I could feel how much I think she felt that too. And after Scott and I were able to have this really nice moment that Desiree Akafan, the brilliant director of those 2 episodes you watched, she kind of let us have that space too.
Also directed by a queer woman.
Yeah. So it was that safe space and that safe world, and we all had been there. Yeah. And I think that shared feeling was so felt that day, even though it was so fucking hot. Yeah.
From a functional perspective, it was a dusty warehouse, and there were hundreds of supporting actors in various scary costumes, and one in an inflatable penis. And so, also just from there were so many beats to hit in that scene, and we had 1 day to film it. So I think it was also just a huge undertaking for everyone involved of just nailing this moment that felt so crucial to the show. But also there are so many comedic beats in the scene, and then moments where you have to have the crowd. It just was honestly amazing to watch everyone accomplish that scene together, because there was so much going on. And I think that's it was done so artistically, and that's what really resonates with people too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of my favorite things about this show, much like this panel, is you can have a wildly funny moment, 1 second, like Benny and Carmen having the poop and puke fest in 104.
Clap.
And then following that by, with an incredibly poignant moment. Obviously, the coming out without saying a word. Scott and Benito, how did you guys approach balancing the heart and the humor, not just in these 2 episodes, but in the whole season?
Well, I think part of it was found in post, but then also part of it is Benny too. He's just really, really funny, and then he'll say something sweet, and and then he's
I'm a total bitch.
Yeah,
I don't know what
then,
this panel
yeah.
is. Yeah.
But I did want to say one quick other thing, if I could, just going back to that night and shooting, and Desiree, she and I also just had this moment of, I'm quite a bit older than Desiree, but still having done this for a while and then feeling like we get to tell this story. And our brilliant, brilliant, brilliant costume designers is like a little Easter egg to make me laugh. I don't know if you even see it in the cut, but there's a Stuart and Stuart's mom from Mad TV who are in costume. So to see that, and then I'm watching Benny do this, and we just get to tell this story, and we get to tell this story now anyway. And without words, it was just such a brilliant. Benny is just, anyway, sorry.
That feels like the show too. It's allowing for, I think, the comedy that is around everything, and I feel that way all the time. It's like Scott and I will have a really deep conversation, or me and Mary Beth, and then right after I'm like, so that just happened. We have to laugh. It's life is so, oh my God, these feelings feel so big, especially at the time in college. So I think having those buttons for us was so fun to pitch and so fun to write and try on the day and be like, okay, maybe don't have the penis cross in front of Carmen for this scene, but but the one before it, love it. And I think we could find that of where things needed space, we gave them space. But when, Grace has that great moment where they have the pooth back and forth, our final pooth joke in the show. Of course, every show needs its pooth joke. But that's when we, in that fight, I thought, okay, we have this joke. Let's try it one more time. Let's just have fun. And Scott and I are at the monitors, and we just shout pooth one more time. Let's go. And she did it. And in the end, some of that comedy actually results in more anger or more confusion. And so I think allowing that too. But I think also, these are college kids, and Carmen's character is dealing with grief. I'm dealing with sexuality struggles. I think Grace is dealing with like a lot of personality struggles and family neglect and those things. So we're trying to tell those stories while also there is a full circus going around in that. So allowing that circus to be there and to hit those beats. But yeah, I think it just, if then you're in that moment and all of a sudden it's like, all right, now they're in their dorm room at the end of the night, I don't think they're joking anymore. I think we're starting to say things we mean and starting to reveal who we are. So I think it was kind of a natural flow to us at some point of being like, this kind of feels like a night out, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I watched both of these episodes recently again, and you can see every character overcompensating in some way or another. But what really strikes me most about this show is it's so much more than it's not just a coming out show, right? Like we talked last week or the week before about how there's so many of those stories have been told, and we've kind of, as a community, evolved beyond those stories. But at a certain point too, this show, it's universal. It's not just a queer storyteller, a story about a young man coming to terms with his sexuality. It's about so much more than that. When you guys were breaking all of the scripts, like, how did you come about? Like, how did you decide to make some of these storylines so universal? It felt intentional? Because getting a show greenlit, especially a queer show greenlit in this landscape, even the landscape 5 years ago, is not easy.
Well, one thing I'll say real quick, just to credit for Amazon, initially the pilot really does focus on Benny's story, and that was the show that was greenlit. Then, as we got into the writer's room and we started talking about how can we expand this world, and then just got so obsessed with everyone overcompensating and the campus overcompensating. And then like Benny one day in the room, he was like, all right, what's a frat that overcompensates? Secret society. So let's do that. And, our dean, Andrea Martin, brilliant Andrea Martin, who came in and did a day with us. Anyway. So it was very intentional that everybody did. So it was sort of, once we knew what they did, then it was, how can we?
Yeah, because I think even in what Mary Beth was saying about Grace and it being kind of tricky in the auditions, because we only had early scenes for her to audition, but we knew that we were going to have a big payoff for Grace. It's like everyone is going to have this moment. One of my favorite scenes in the whole show is Wally and Adam DeMarco in that scene where Carmen and Peter are on the bed, and you find out his past, and you realize, oh, okay, I thought I knew you, but now do I feel sorry for you? Maybe a little bit. Maybe you're just a kid like they are. And I think that was so fun to write for us and to think about. Yeah, I think that in maybe a world of such intense judgment for these experiences, or being like, I could never relate. I love when people are like, I'm gay, but this show's kind of funny. And I'm just like, okay. I'm like, love that. I'm glad that I'm like, we didn't make it for one person. I think we wanted people at any age and any demographic and any sexuality to come to this show and be like, that feels like college to me, and trying to find yourself. And that is what was so exciting and so fun to write and fun to watch. I mean, seeing like Mary Beth perform Welcome to the Black Parade, seeing Wally then get in that costume for 5, which is so not her, and those things that are kind of also devastating too. It's just, that was like heaven, because you can see the ties that we all share at that time in our lives too.
Yeah, beautifully stated. Yeah. These episodes, you mentioned obviously, Carmen and Peter. As a viewer, I'm almost rooting for them at this point, even though, the Grace has the on again, off again, because it felt like they were being their true selves, right? Like, and you're like, wait, is he cheating? Is, the backstabbing, all of that stuff. But Mary Beth, what did you think about how Grace handles everything, in this episode? Obviously she gets rejected by her ex-girlfriend in this and then winds up going back to Peter. But, like, what did you think when you found out about where that storyline was going?
Well, I think what was so amazing in the writer's room was just how much care Benny and Scott wanted to have for all of the characters, because they really wanted to feel like every single character was justified in their decisions, so that even though they're imperfect and maybe sometimes like unlikable, which is such like a discourse around television characters, we wanted the audience to really understand why they were making these choices. So I think episode 4 is so important for Grace because she really finds herself excelling in a leadership role, and she doesn't actually need Peter there. And if anything, he's kind of trying to like hinder hinder her performance. And she's getting to hang out with Charlie XCX, which is so cool. And so I think that is a really important moment for her. But these characters also, of course, they're only human, so they are gonna like backslide a little bit. So I think she goes into Peter's room with the costumes feeling really emboldened. I just got this job offer, like I'm so much better without you. But then when, you know, the friend that she always thought was gonna be there is actually like, well, I've moved on, she just feels like, oh, I have no choice but to go back to this person. Because Peter really does offer her this validation that she's never gotten from her family, and maybe even being like a little bit goth or emo, like from her peers either. So I totally understood why she would make that choice. And I think that's what's so brilliant about the writing in the show is just like so many, especially women who've been in relationships where it, you know, they have to make themselves smaller to make the guy feel bigger, can relate to that story. And so I've always come back to this idea that like the show is about love feeling conditional, and that if you are your true self in front of someone, they might not love you anymore. And so I think Grace grapples with that the entire season, and then by the end of it, she's really able to like stick it to Peter in that moment outside the house party. But like, who knows what happens when she has to deal with like the repercussions of that. So coming back to campus potentially next semester, and she doesn't have the like campus legend boyfriend. Like, what is she gonna have to overcompensate for at that point? So I just have a lot of like empathy for Grace, and I think she is a confusing female character because she has such a rich inner life, and so that's what people have reached out to me the most about, is just like I saw so much of myself in Grace. And so I love the character so much, and I do hope if there's a season 2 she is brunette.
She is. We'll confirm that here.
Ankler exclusive. That's my
we want the Cal McLaughlin to find her hair dye too, because he had to dye his hair for a show, and I was like, I like that. That feels right for Daddy.
But don't touch Connie Britton.
No, and we never would. That blowout? No. Are you kidding? Yeah. It needs its own trailer.
You know, I got the Connie blowout tonight.
I know. Look at my girl.
Walked in and said, give me the Connie.
So I do want to talk about how raunchy this show is at times.
What do you
the
mean?
Roommate, come on. I watched this show the first time with my mom, my 80-year-old mother.
But did she laugh?
Yes, she laughed, but then she said, I'm not gay, but I can see why you like this show.
Kind of funny.
It's like, thanks, Mom. Anyway, but Benito, this show is obviously so rooted in your life. Was there anything that you were scared to depict on screen, and how much of this experience did you find liberating?
Yeah, I keep on having to talk about this, but we're just going with it.
Every single panel.
I have to. But there was one scene at the top of 106, which you haven't seen. Excited for you to go home and watch that. Oh, God. But I was in the writer's room, and I just, there's this like moment, and I think that this did feel human and universal. But I get on all fours, and I go through a trash can to see if a condom has been used or not. You have to not judge, my love. It's art.
But it's really romantic. It's romantic when you watch.
It's sexy, and it was sweet. We shot it beautifully.
The lighting, exquisite.
Done. It kind of is like beautifully lit in that scene, which I'm like, why? That was one where I was like, oh God. But then, this writer's room was filled with a lot of peers and people that I had come up with in the New York comedy scene. And so I felt so comfortable. And Scott and I had been working together at that point, I think almost 3 years. So it's like, there's no safer space that I felt to be like, I did this thing. I'm so mortified. And if this is like too crazy, you have to tell me. And Jordan Mendoza, who wrote the 6th episode with me and Scott, was like, dude, it's your fucking story. Put that shit in there. He's like, and so we were like, all right, let's go. But I think that what I thought about, and I think now in seeing it, I'm like, it is this moment that I think all of us have of a private moment of exploring desire and what that looks like, and feeling like I'm the only person in the world. And I know that all of you have done some shit like this, because my DMs after, I'm like, didn't need to know that. They're like, the top of episodes, I did something. I'm like, please don't tell me. Save it for your show. Do it publicly on Prime. But yeah, I think that was one of those things. And
Well,
yeah.
acting is such a funny job because we were trying to figure out what the sex scene between Peter and Grace should be in episode 6. And so I was on a Zoom with Scott and Adam, my co-star, and we were thinking like, what's the most devastating way the sex could end between a heterosexual couple? And I had to say in front of my boss, I was like, well, one time this guy faked an orgasm with me and I checked the condom after to see if there was cum in it. And he was like, that's it.
And we went,
Got it.
We went, family, the Scanlons, come on.
Parallel
A brother and
lives.
sister.
We had not seen a male faked orgasm on screen that I could think of. So it was just this also desire to show things that we had not seen before. And I remember when you pitched that in the room, we were all just like, well, that's it. Yeah. That is it. That he has to pick and then the roommate walks in and says, oh, you jerk off into condoms too. So there was that, whose condom is it really? Which is always a fun question to leave the audience with.
That's what we always want them to leave with, of course, even at the end of 5. But yeah, I guess, what was the question, if there was anything? I think I answered it. I can restart and talk about that scene again if you want. Yeah.
You touched on the scary part of the DMs that you're getting, but
Yeah.
let's talk about the positive. What kind of feedback have you been hearing from young viewers who are maybe seeing themselves in your character?
I've had this kind of this really, it feels very emotional and really also I think I'm both like it makes me sad, but then I think I am excited by the prospect of what I think is being made, hopefully, and you and I have had this conversation. But I think that some of the conversations I've had in the past few months are like, oh, but a coming out story now, like everyone's gay. And I'm like, okay, I love that. For sure, we spent 5 years on this. But I was like, yeah, but maybe in Los Angeles and maybe in New York. But I don't think we know what people are saying in locker rooms in Idaho still. And I think if it's anything like what's going on in the White House, it's probably not that nice. And it really took me one line that someone said, like when I was in first grade, to be like, oh, I'm unlovable like this. I have to change who I am. And so I think people saying, I saw myself in this, or I saw it in this little scene, or this little moment, or even if George of the Jungle wasn't their sexual awakening, they're like, some of them sent it to me. I was like, oh my God, you're so young. Like, that's crazy. I'm like, oh my God. Their sexual awakenings are movies that came out like 5 years ago. But I'm like, wait, what?
Joe from The Facts of Life.
Oh, love. That's really good. Who's you?
I weirdly don't want to share.
And hey, perfect. We'll put it in season 2. Yeah.
It's so long ago.
Oh, come on.
Well, okay.
Charlie Chaplin.
Yes. I was 16. There he was. No, it was, there was a show when I was a kid, and the thing is, I just didn't know what it was, but this is what it was. Electric Company was so, right?
Yes.
Morgan Freeman, as Easy Reader, was my sexual awakening.
I love this.
I was so instantly in love with him. He's so smart. He's so handsome, and that's who it was.
I love that so much. So we're running out of time, but last question. What are you guys hearing about season 2? And can you give us some kind of teaser about what you have in mind, should you hopefully get that, and what these fine people who have given you their time can do to help you get a second season?
God, go home and stream it, even if you've seen it before you go to bed. It's really beautiful on the TV. The kind of light reflecting off of it as you go to bed.
Yeah.
Maybe
as you leave the house for the day. Just let it run.
Let it run. No, it's probably
Right?
we
Why
probably
not?
aren't
Your
allowed to
cat,
say that.
Your dog wants to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right to Amazon.
Right to your senator.
Senator.
Yeah.
Yes.
All I can say for season 2 is that it's kind of what we're saying. We have so many stories that we are not done telling. I think we're so inspired also by this cast and about some of the people that came in for one day. I mean, we got Connie and Kyle, I think, for like 4 days total. And what they've done in this show, I think, is remarkable. Caleb Heron was there for 1 day. Owen Thiel was there for like 3. And I think there's so much more to say in that experience, and the experience of someone who's in the closet versus out, and the friction and finding friendship in that. So yeah, I think, and also the siblings. There's so much to say here, and if you've seen the finale, you know that they might have to talk. So I think we're ready to go. I mean, we've pitched it. We're ready.
Yeah.
Let's go.
We're so ready. And also,
Yeah.
although Holmes was supposed to be here, she is sick, sadly. I know. But Spring Break with Haley.
Right.
Haley directed Spring Break we are so excited.
Zed Clarity, play it, you know? Chainsmokers, Roses, let her rip.
Well, thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you.
giving
You're
us your
amazing.
time. And thank you to all of you for coming
Thank
out tonight.
you.
Let's hear it for the cast and creators of Overcompensating.